A hit-and-miss quarter for the world's biggest computer chip maker as Intel reports earnings after the bell. The company hits a record high on quarterly revenues, but misses earnings estimates by a penny a share. We get the latest from Intel's chief financial officer.
America's factories get scorched by higher energy costs as producer prices rack up their biggest one-month gain since 1990. It's a sign consumers could be paying higher prices down the road.
These familiar income tax forms may be getting a makeover, and the changes could change what you pay Uncle Sam. We talk with the head of the President's Tax Reform Commission about reforming the forms and your tax bracket.
Then they're living large, really large, and flying them internationally is a really large challenge. We'll tell you which company tackled a whale of a problem and got it done right.
I'm Susie Garab.
And I'm Paul Kangas. This is Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, October 18th.
Nightly Business Report is made possible by
Objective financial advice. It's right for any nest egg, regardless of size. A.G. Edwards. For 118 years, fully invested in our clients.
Franklin Templeton Investments, providing a unique perspective through the specialized investment expertise of Franklin Templeton Mutual Series and Fiduciary Trust. Franklin Templeton Investments. Gain from our perspective. This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mixed results for Intel during the third quarter. The giant chip maker posted record revenues but missed estimates on the earnings side. Intel earned 32 cents a share on the quarter, a penny shy of analyst estimates, but those numbers include a one-time legal charge of 2 cents a share. Intel came in slightly ahead of the street on its third quarter revenue numbers at just under $10 billion, the company's best quarterly revenues ever. As for the current quarter, Intel's chief financial officer, Andy Bryant, sees revenues solidly over the $10 billion mark, somewhere between $10.2 and $10.8 billion.
Well, we do expect the fourth quarter to be higher. In reality, if you try to look at the consumption of PCs, we think in the third quarter it was about seasonal consumption. Even though our revenue reported was a little bit better than seasonal, we think in the fourth quarter there'll be about seasonal consumption as well.
Bryant also says so far, soaring energy prices and rising interest rates are not showing an impact on Intel's fourth quarter sales. Intel shares ended the regular session up 26 cents at $23.72 and then fell almost $1 in after-hours trading.
A surprise on the economic front today. Wholesale inflation posted its largest one-month gain since the early 1990s. The producer price index surged 1.9% in September, exceeding forecasts and disappointing Wall Street. As Suzanne Pratt reports, economists blamed much of the increase on the recent hurricanes.
Weeks after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita ravaged the Gulf Coast, the storm's aftermath continues to take a heavy toll on the economy. A hurricane-led surge in energy costs was largely responsible for the 1.9% jump in the producer price index in September, the largest one-month gain in more than 15 years. As expected, energy prices spiked after the widespread shutdown of refineries and oil platforms. But food prices, which had been declining, also surged higher, posting their largest increase in nearly a year. The uptick in inflation wasn't confined to the usually volatile food and energy sectors. The core PPI, which excludes those costs, gained 0.3%. Despite the ugly headline number, the core rate also garnered attention on Wall Street. Some economists say it could put significant pressure on retail prices, while others believe surging oil prices won't do as much damage to the overall economy as they have in the past.
It is a little bit, but not as much as you might think, because energy is a much smaller share of the economy than it was 15 years ago, back in 1980-81, which is the last time we had a major inflation push from energy. This time around, energy just isn't as big, and we're working with a much lower underlying rate of inflation going into the problem.
Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan echoed those observations in a speech today in Tokyo. Greenspan said, quote, "The recent jump in energy prices will undoubtedly be a drag from now on," end quote, but added they will be less of a problem than in the 70s. Still, most economists expect the Fed to boost short-term interest rates when it meets November 1st.
The growth rate of the economy is still solid. Even with the effects of the hurricane built in, we are seeing the economy perform well. And Fed officials are very much concerned about high energy prices feeding through to other goods and services and leading to a pickup in the inflation rate.
Economists predict inflation will continue to be a problem in the months ahead. That means consumers can expect the Federal Reserve to keep raising interest rates to contain those higher prices. Suzanne Pratt, Nightly Business Report, New York.
Investors were torn between that worrisome wholesale inflation report and solid earnings from Merrill Lynch, 3M, and United Technologies. So this morning, the Dow moved in just single-digit gains and losses, while the Nasdaq Composite did about the same. Just after 1 p.m., though, a 24 million share block of ExxonMobil traded on the downside, undermining the oil sector and the market in general. So the Dow Industrial Average fell to a closing loss of 62.84 at 10,285.26. The Nasdaq Composite was down 14.30 at 2,056 even. Standard & Poor's 500 fell 11.96 to 1178.14. In the bond market, the 10-year note rose at 6/30 seconds to 98 and 7/30 seconds, putting the yield at 4.48%.
More trouble in the tropics tonight. This time it's Hurricane Wilma that's threatening the U.S. mainland, and she's already causing concern in the commodities pits. The storm is near Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula and is expected to strengthen and head towards Florida's Gulf Coast late this week. With the prospect of Wilma ripping through the state's citrus groves, orange juice futures are spiking at 6-year highs, rising more than 5% in the last 2 days. The $9 billion citrus industry was badly pummeled last year when hurricanes Charlie, Francis, and Jean all blew through within weeks of each other. As a result, last year's citrus crop was the smallest in 50 years.
The New York Stock Exchange is saying so long to Revco. The big board delisted the embattled commodities trader today, just 2 months after Revco went public. The move comes on the heels of a securities fraud scandal that unfolded last week and saw Revco's stock price slash by over 70%. Late last night, Revco filed for bankruptcy court protection. It noted in the paperwork that it had inked a deal to sell its trading unit to investment group J.C. Flowers for $768 million. J.C. Flowers also has an option to buy the rest of the company.
The President's Commission on Tax Reform is making what one member calls a huge move towards simplification. Today, the group endorsed a plan to make the 1040 form easier to file. The panel wants to slash the number of lines on that commonly used form from 75 to 32. It also wants to cut the number of tax brackets from 6 to 4 and tweak things so most taxpayers would fall into the 15% bracket. The Commission will also suggest eliminating the alternative minimum tax. It would pay for all of this by capping deductions for mortgage interest and taxing employer-provided health care. For more details on the plan, Washington Bureau Chief Darren Gersh talked today with Jeffrey Kupfer, the Commission's executive director. Darren began by asking him why the panel also wants to eliminate the deduction for state and local taxes.
It's clear that people who are in low tax states end up subsidizing people who are in high tax states. And the idea is that many people who live in high tax states get a certain level of government services, which is an additional level of government services that people get who are in these other states. And the idea was that those people actually get a benefit for that. It's something, they don't just pay the taxes and get the same level of benefit as everybody else. They get a higher level of benefit, and therefore there's not necessarily a rationale for why people who get a smaller level of benefit from their government services should subsidize those folks.
What are you going to say to critics who argue, look, you know, my property taxes help support schools, and we need good schools for competitiveness? What would you say to people who are concerned about that?
Well, I would say that the property taxes that are paid to support good schools, that's great, and we're all in favor of having good schools, but the people who then go to those schools get the benefit of those schools, and that's fine. I mean, they're paying for it, and they get the benefit of it. The issue is whether someone who is in another state or another jurisdiction somewhere else in the country should subsidize the person who's living somewhere else who's chosen to pay for that higher level of government services. So it's an overall equity decision for people around the country. The other point is that the way the current state and local tax deduction is structured is that it is an upside-down benefit in that it goes disproportionately to high-income people. Right now, it's only available to people who itemize. That's about a third of the population. So those are the only people who get a benefit for that deduction at all. The other 65% of Americans, taxpayers, do not get any benefit. And the third point is that with the increasing reach of the alternative minimum tax, many of the state and local tax deductions that people think that they're going to get over time is actually going away. And so, unlike in 1986, which was the last time there was a real discussion about eliminating the state and local tax deduction, we're in a much different environment now where the state and local tax deduction is effectively going away as it is.
One of the things, though, that hasn't changed about this environment is you have senators who are very concerned from states where people pay a lot of state and local taxes with maintaining that. Senator Chuck Schumer of New York vowed to defeat this proposal even before you've written it. How are you going to overcome these political hurdles to getting a simpler, flatter tax system?
Well, what I would urge people to do who live in those high tax states and have a benefit from a state and local tax deduction now is to look at the entire package that the panel is going to bring forward. First of all, the panel has said that we will eliminate the alternative minimum tax. That's something that definitely benefits people who live in those same states. Other things that we are planning to do in the proposal, for instance, there is no more phase out of personal exemptions. There is no more phase out of the child credit. Everybody in the whole income structure, anywhere along those lines, will get those benefits, something that currently does not happen.
But the mortgage deduction, you're talking about capping that at around $312,000. Couldn't somebody look at that and say, well, you know, that's a tax increase?
It's another example of looking at each provision in isolation and not looking at the entire package. The way the mortgage interest deduction is currently structured is it does give a higher benefit to higher income people. What the panel has proposed is to bring down that cap, make it available to everybody, not just people who itemize, try to tie it to the median home price, and then use, not only do you have a fairer provision, but you're also able to do other things in the tax system. For instance, we bring down the top rate in this plan from current 35% to 33%. So many of the people who may feel that they are not benefiting anymore from the mortgage interest deduction will have a lower rate on their total income. So when you look at everything as a package, people may not be affected as badly as they think they are. And in fact, we'll be much better off because they will have a much simpler, more straightforward tax system.
Jeff Kupfer, Executive Director of the President's Commission on Tax Reform. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Johnson & Johnson may be waffling in its plans to buy cardiac device maker Guidant. The drug giant said today it's considering alternatives to the buyout. A deal was struck back in December to merge Guidant into J&J. But since then, Guidant has been plagued with quality problems and its stock price has fallen from around $76 a share to around $64. There's been buzz on Wall Street for months that J&J might want to renegotiate the $25.5 billion price tag that was originally put on the deal. So the company's comment today might be sending that signal, and Paul, J&J sent that signal on a conference call today when it was discussing its earnings.
Earnings that put J&J stock among the most actively traded on the big board today, Susie. We'll see it in a moment as we look at our stocks in the news tonight. By far, the volume leader was ExxonMobil on 45.6 million shares, and of course that included that 24 million share block that I mentioned earlier that traded just after 1 p.m., and it led the whole oil group lower. The oils were lower in general because crude prices fell after Hurricane Wilma was forecast to bypass the Gulf oil production platforms. Here we see some other majors, Chevron, Conoco, and Marathon all dropping over $2 a share. Then we go back to Nortel Networks with a penny gain, followed by Guidant down $8.28. As you heard, Johnson & Johnson's takeover could be in jeopardy. Ford Motor was down 19 cents. Merrill Lynch downgraded it from neutral to sell. Motorola, 23-cent gain just after the close. Motorola reported third quarter earnings at 30 cents, 2 cents above the street estimate, and I saw the stock trading as high as $20.78 in after hours. Lucent Technology, 7-cent drop, followed by Calpine, 38-cent loss there. And then Johnson & Johnson itself managed to gain or lose 3 cents on the day. And now, besides its possible change of heart regarding the Guidant takeover, J&J posted third quarter earnings of 87 cents, up from 78 a year ago, and a penny better than Wall Street was expecting. Interpublic Group, a $0.50 loss, and Pfizer managed to gain a penny, 10th in big board volume. 3M, this is a big Dow stock, up $2.24. Third quarter earnings of $1.10, up from 97 cents last year, 2 cents better than the street was expecting. United Technologies, yet another big Dow component. Third quarter earnings, 81 cents versus 68 last year. Revenues up 17%. Those earnings were 2 cents better than the street consensus. American Standard down $7.60. The earnings didn't sit too well with investors. Third quarter, 75 up from 71, but 3 cents below the street estimate. And the company cut 2005 overall earnings estimate from around $2.68 down to $2.56 a share. Standard & Poor's downgraded this stock from strong buy to just a hold recommendation. Merrill Lynch up 12 cents. The third quarter earnings came in at $1.40, up from 93 last year, and 22 cents above the street estimate. Great Atlantic and Pacific up $2.93. The company posted second quarter earnings, listen to this, $14.40 a share, but that does include a gain, and a big gain, from the sale of A&P Canada. A year ago, the company lost $1.67 a share. Borders Group down $1.58. Company sees a wider than expected third quarter loss ranging from 16 to 20 cents a share. Prudential downgraded the stock from neutral to underweight. Google topped the active list on NASDAQ, losing $1.72. Microsoft 4-cent gain. Intel 26-cent gain, but as you heard after the close, those earnings were a penny shy of estimates. Stock dropped about 90 cents. Apple Computer down $1.23. And Yahoo was off 46 cents in regular weight trading. After the close, Yahoo reported third quarter earnings of 17 cents. That was the same as last year, but 3 cents better than the street consensus. And after hours trading, Yahoo stock around $33.97, moved up pretty nicely. Dell was a 97-cent loser. Cisco, 19-cent drop. Amgen moved up 47 cents. eBay, 42-cent loss. 10th in volume was Qualcomm with a 26-cent gain. Novella System down $3.06. Third quarter earnings way down, 17 cents versus 45 cents a year ago, and revenues fell 19%. The company's chief exec cited higher warranty costs in the integrated circuit business. And finally, a very nice sweet gain, Imperial Sugar up $1.82. The company declared a special $2.50 per share cash dividend. And those are the stocks in the news tonight. Susie?
Paul, on Capitol Hill today, a comprehensive plan to reform the nation's pension system is running into trouble. The problem? How to make sure the federal agency that guarantees pensions has the money to pay out future claims while still making sure employers provide pensions. As Stephanie Dew reports, a Senate committee today took a stopgap approach to solving the nation's pension problems.
As steel, airline, and auto companies struggle with pension obligations, lawmakers today voted to dramatically boost the premiums companies pay to fund the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation. But not everyone thinks that's a good idea.
It strikes me that the whole effort we've had in doing this pension legislation was to encourage companies to continue with defined benefit plans. And it strikes me that what we're doing here goes very much against that.
The committee vote today is part of the larger budget reconciliation bill. It's aimed at making the federal budget look better. It would generate $6.7 billion over 5 years by increasing the premium paid by all single employer plans from $19 to $46.75 per participant. And it raises the premium on multi-employer plans or group plans from $2.60 to $8.
None of us want this premium ultimately to be enacted into law. Adopting the comprehensive reform will solve this problem, but for now, a flat rate premium increase of $46.75 is the least bad option that we face.
James Klein, who represents pension plan sponsors, says the premium increases will make it harder to pass reforms that give employers greater flexibility to fund their pensions.
The money that is raised from these premium increases really is needed to help pay for strengthening the funding rules. If Congress only raises the premiums but leaves for another day strengthening the funding rules, it will have to find additional money to pay for it at that time.
Still, many observers expect Congress to pass comprehensive reform before businesses will have to pay more.
When the rules that dictate pension contributions are going to change in an adverse way for industry, at that point we're expecting that a lot of these companies are going to basically start lobbying Congress very, very vociferously for this change.
Today's proposed bill also puts steep penalties on companies that dump their pension obligations on the Pension Benefit Guaranty Corporation in bankruptcy, an idea that may get more debate as lawmakers work to pass broader pension reform. Stephanie Dew, Nightly Business Report, Washington.
Tomorrow, a look behind those earnings numbers from Yahoo. We sit down with the internet giant's chief financial officer.
Delta Airlines will soon be the world's largest transatlantic carrier. The bankrupt airline announced a huge expansion of its international routes today, beefing up service to Europe and the Middle East. The reason? The high-profit nature of those international flights. Delta says that by 2007, 35% of its total revenues will come from international travel.
It looks like Congress will not be getting a pay raise next year. The Senate today voted to cancel its automatic $3,100 pay increase. Instead, the $2 million at stake will go to hurricane relief. The senator behind the amendment stopping the raise calls it a symbolic measure. So far, Congress has approved $62 billion in emergency funding for hurricane relief.
Here's a look at what's happening tomorrow. September housing starts and the weekly oil and gas inventory numbers come out. Also tomorrow, earnings from Bank of America, E-Trade, Eastman Kodak, eBay, Honeywell, JP Morgan Chase, and Washington Mutual. Investing in stocks has been compared to gambling, and investors compared to gamblers. Tonight's commentator says a big bet is riding on Kirk Kerkorian and General Motors. Here's Alan Sloan, Wall Street editor of Newsweek magazine.
Those of us who grew up during the heyday of Wilt Chamberlain, the late great basketball player, remember him as the Big Dipper. These days, though, Kirk Kerkorian, the billionaire takeover artist, has become the biggest dipper of all. That's because he's one of the few people left who buy stock on dips. Last week, with General Motors in free fall because of the Delphi bankruptcy, the Big Dipper shelled out $67 million of borrowed money yet to buy more shares. That gave him 9.9% of GM, the most he can own for now. That was on top of the $600 million Kerkorian spent in the spring buying GM when it went into a swoon, and the $1 billion he spent buying at a premium after his interest had driven up the price. Now he's back to form, buying on dips. He looked pretty bad last week as GM kept falling, giving him a $200 billion paper loss on his investment. But the deal between GM and the United Auto Workers has made him look a lot smarter. After yesterday's run-up of GM stock, he was even ahead a couple bucks on his investment. Kerkorian, a long-term thinker at 88, is betting that yesterday was the start of a major turnaround at GM. If he's right, the Big Dipper will be the big winner and will become the richest 90-year-old on the planet. I'm Alan Sloan.
Recapping today's market action, investors send stocks lower on worries about inflation. The Dow loses 62 points and the Nasdaq Composite falls 14. To learn more about the stories in tonight's broadcast, go to nbr.com.
And finally tonight, beluga whales don't do a lot of flying. When you weigh 1,600 pounds and you are 12 feet long, it does kind of limit your options for traveling by air. But not when your airline is UPS. This week, the air freight service delivered 2 whales to the Georgia Aquarium, flying them in from Mexico City. As you might expect, the Boeing 767 cargo plane used for the move had to be modified for these 2 particular passengers, including installing custom tanks that weighed 26,000 pounds once filled with water and whales. The UPS pilots had to fly high and fast to keep stress on the animals to a minimum, including special care during takeoff and landing. The whales are named Nico and Gasper. They're now safe at home, Paul, at the new aquarium, and that's set to open next month.
I guess you could call that a whale of a fish story, Susie.
Yes. But it's a true one.
That's interesting.
That's Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, October 18th. I'm Susie Garib. Good night, everyone. Good night to you, Paul.
Good night, Susie. I'm Paul Kangas, wishing all of you the best of goodbyes.
Nightly Business Report is made possible by Franklin Templeton Investments, providing a unique perspective through the specialized investment expertise of Franklin Templeton Mutual Series and Fiduciary Trust. Franklin Templeton Investments, gain from our perspective.
And by A.G. Edwards.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Stay with OPB. The News Hour with Jim Lehrer is next.
For more information about investing, you may order Nightly Business Report's home video, The NBR Guide to Buying Bonds. This program is available in either the VHS or DVD formats.
I am PBS. Funding for local broadcast of Nightly Business Report has been provided by viewers like you and by the following. SAFE Corporation, preventing workplace injuries and helping Oregon employers manage the cost of workers' compensation insurance. SAFE, on the job for Oregon.
Well, when Jim and I sat and talked about who we'd like to give money to and what organizations we like to support, we realized for really very little more money, instead of giving $10, $20 here, we could make a difference by joining the Cornerstone Society. So what's one less latte a day when you can make a big difference?
Business partner Northwest Senior News has made a contribution to the Program Fund for Excellence. Additional funding has been provided by you, the contributing members of OPB.
On Nova Science Now, can you take something that's